Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for my review of Season 1 of the television program Arrow. This is a show I know has been on for a while, and I was looking for some more new shows to get into. I had heard some pretty good things about this show, and it looked pretty interesting. It looked a little different from some of the other shows on TV, so I decided to check it out. And I have to say, Arrow mostly delivered. I thought Season 1 was very good overall. I was not disappointed. And the show does what I think all good season one should do. It sets things up very well for future seasons. I don't quite think the show hit the great category in season one, and there's a few reasons for this, which I'll get into later on in this review. But overall, I was very satisfied with the show. So, Arrow is based on the character the Green Arrow from DC Comics. And the character is played by Stephen Amell, and I have to say his acting is very good. As a matter of fact, I think all the acting is pretty solid on this show. I don't know if it's anything, award-worthy, but the acting is very satisfactory. I didn't have any real big problems with any of the actors on this show. Also, I was very invested in all the characters on this show. That's another positive. All the main characters and even some of the supporting characters that have to do with the plot line that takes up the whole first season were very developed, and I was actually invested in all the characters, which can sometimes be hard to do on a show, so I appreciated that. The show is also very well paced for the most part. I would say this shows a balance between an action show and, kind of like a crime drama with superhero elements mixed in, and all this is balanced very well, as well as the use of flashbacks, which, as I've said in other reviews, can be very good or very bad depending on how they are used. And I have to say, I was a little skeptical of the flashback format in a few of the early episodes. I thought they started out a little bit slow, but by the end of the season, I felt they got better and better as the season went on, and they blended in better with the overall context of the story. And I was just as invested in what was happening in the past as I was in the present by the end of the season. So I think the flashbacks were very well used in this show, and I will be interested to see how many flashbacks are used going forward. I will say that there's probably a few too many episodes, which is typical of, some television shows. I did think the second half of the season was much, much better than the first half. I just thought it was paced better, and some of the flaws of the first half were taken care of, but that's always good. It seems like the people who created the show kind of fixed a few of the issues, other than maybe one issue, which I will now get into. There are a few small problems with this show, in my opinion. One is that occasionally some of the drama seems just a little bit forced. It seems a little bit like a teenage soap opera at times, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with teenage soap operas. It's just I'm not really sure how well it fits in with the rest of the themes of this show. It doesn't necessarily work that well in the context of a superhero show. But there's not a lot of places where this happens, and it's not too big of a problem. But I did feel every now and then like the show tried a little bit too hard to contrive drama. But nothing that ruins the show or anything. My bigger issue with season one of this show is that there's this villain of the week mentality kind of. Now, there's nothing wrong with a villain of the week, but the villains were very much stereotypes. They weren't very interesting, and they weren't developed very well either, especially in the first half of the season. A lot of the villains of the episode barely got any screen time. They would appear like for a few seconds at the beginning of an episode, and then they would just pop in and out. And it almost seemed like they were thrown into episodes just for the episode to say we have a villain, but they really weren't needed in the overall plot. So I'm hoping in future seasons, either they get kind of just do away with the villain of the week, or if you're going to have them, develop them further. A lot of times they didn't even seem necessary to the plot and felt forced into me, which isn't a huge, huge problem, but in a superhero show, I feel villains are important. Luckily, the overall, big villains and the main storyline were good, but I thought some of the smaller villain of the weeks were very, very weak. But overall, this was an excellent show. I would say if I had to pick my favorite character, it's probably Felicity Smoke, played by Emily Bett Rickards. I really enjoyed her and look forward to seeing more of her character in the future. And if I had to pick favorite episodes, I would say The Odyssey and Sacrifice, which was the season finale, which, in my opinion, sets things up very well for future episodes. So like I said, I definitely plan on watching Arrow Season 2 to see what happens from here. Overall, the show was very compelling and kept me interested throughout. If they could have cleaned up a few of the problems I mentioned, some of the melodrama and doing a little bit better job with some of the villains, I would have given the show an even higher score. But as it is, I'm going to give Arrow Season 1 a 4 out of 5 because I think it sets out to do most of the things that it wants to accomplish, and it worked for me. So I do recommend Arrow for fans of superhero shows and crime shows as well. I think it does a good job in both of these areas. So 4 out of 5 for Arrow Season 1. If you'd like, you can tell me if you watch Arrow or if you plan on watching Arrow, some of your opinions or what you look forward to on the show. And as always, thank you very much for watching.